So if you could take your seats, that would be great. We're going to start right after a few hugs. Okay. Welcome, welcome. My name's Richard Jones. I am the city clerk for the great city of Newburyport, and it's my honor once a year to do the State of the City address. Before we start, I would like to, at the risk of leaving anyone out, mention certain people here that deserve to be recognized. I'm going to start with, if I might, city councilors. We have Councilor Vogel, and we have Councilor Connell, who is our president. He's going to speak. Am I missing anyone else? We have members of the school committee, Nick Cantor, Bruce Menon, Brian Callahan, and David Hockheiser. Thank you for coming. Lois would like me to speak. And I missed someone. So, without any further ado. So tonight's program, just so you know, does everyone have a program? No. So we're going to introduce in a second the Police Department Honor Guard. We will then have the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, an opening prayer. Then we will hear from Senator Diana Zoglia and Representative James Kalkors. Then we will also hear from the Children's Chorus. Then the Council President, Barry Connell, will say something brief, and that will lead into the Mayor's speech. So, to start the program, I'd like to introduce the Police Department Honor Guard. Next, we will be led in the national anthem by the Executive Director, John F. Moynihan, that's of the Firehouse Center.
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, John. That was wonderful. You were a little bit alone without me on the high notes. You were terrific. The Pledge of Allegiance, we will be led by Anya and Arissa Ibrahim. How are you?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Birthday, John. Next on our agenda is we have the opening prayer by Reverend Rebecca Bryant. She is the new minister for the Unitarian Universalist Church, and we welcome her to Newburyport.
Thank you, everyone. Let us just take a moment, gather ourselves, center ourselves, as we like to say, in a spirit of prayer or meditation. Spirit of life, God of so many names and no name, be with us now. Bless this gathering, bless the city for which we assemble, and bless its inhabitants. We come this evening with hopes, curiosities, and interests. Let us learn from one another and find ways to know that our commitment matters, and realize that our actions are part of the fabric of this community that we call home. May our minds be open to retain the history of this beloved city so that we may learn from its past and plan for its future. May our hearts be open to the beauty that abounds in these our natural surroundings and that is illumined as well in the eyes of our neighbors and friends. May we remember tonight and every day that we are different and that we are alike, that we all love, we all hurt, and we all care deeply about things that matter to us. Let every stranger become our neighbor, and every visitor be our welcomed guest. Let us treat each other with kindness, compassion, and respect, so that we may learn from one another, discover our shared vision, and build a stronger community for all who live here now and all who have yet to come. Above all, may ours be a city of peace, a place that helps us to uphold our values, and in which we are all free to live our dreams and offer our gifts and our service to this, our community. Amen.
It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our state senator, Diana DeZoglio.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. That's better. It is a great evening to be here. First, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I'd especially like to thank Mayor Holaday for allowing me to say a few words. As your new state senator, I'm pleased to now represent communities that I've long enjoyed visiting and enjoyed not as the state senator, but have been here. And I'm excited to work with each and every one of you now in this capacity. The 1st Essex District is one of the most unique in Massachusetts, spanning most of the valley along the New Hampshire border. The fundamental challenges of how best to educate our children, encourage business growth, and protect the natural resources that are treasures to us and visitors alike are a common thread for all of the Merrimack Valley cities and towns. And the way we will address these challenges is to do so together as friends and neighbors. And speaking of friends, I'm so excited to be here with Mayor Holaday tonight, whose tenure in City Hall's corner office has seen the completion of countless projects and progress in so many facets of life here in Newburyport. These include the development of the city's 40R Smart Growth District, the construction of the Senior and Community Center, and the preservation of cherished local monuments such as the In Street Fountain and the Emma Andrews Library. These projects were accomplished during the same time frame when the city saw its bond rating reach AAA status. That's as good as it gets, and a city does not achieve this distinction unless it has a strong leader at the helm committed to fiscal responsibility and management. Mayor Holaday is passionate about educating the city's children, and she is proud to have overseen the completion of 2 major school projects during her tenure as mayor: the construction of the Bresnahan Elementary School and the renovation of the Knock Middle School. Academically, Newburyport schools are consistently listed among the top performing schools in the state a testament to the strong investments Mayor Holaday has pushed for. On the environmental front, Mayor Holaday has worked hard on behalf of two of the city's great natural treasures, Plum Island Beach and the Merrimack River. And over the last month, as many of you may know, we've been working together on ways to combat the combined sewage overflow issues regarding the Merrimack River. Mayor Holaday also continues to work closely with the Merrimack River Beach Alliance and other local elected officials to find a comprehensive solution to the very real problem of beach erosion. Mayor Holaday has compiled a record of accomplishment that illustrates her dedication to a city we all know and love. And I'm proud to call her a partner in government. I'm even prouder to call her a friend. And I look forward to working with you in this next year in the upcoming session, Mayor Holaday. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Now we're going to hear from someone we all know, Representative James Kelcourse.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and I just want to start out by thanking all of you for this wonderful opportunity to be here before you this evening. It's been a great 4 years, and I want to especially thank you all for another 2 years. Mayor Holaday and I have had a great working relationship over these last 4 years. We've seen a lot of things happen in the city together. We've worked on so many different projects here in the great city of Newburyport. And, you know, it's all of you that really make my job easier each and every day. It's a difficult job. We have 3 communities that have all different types of needs. We all share concerns about Chapter 70 funding and making sure that our children in the school systems get the very best education. We're all concerned about our public safety, our fire and our police, and making sure that they have the resources, our DPW, so we can make sure our streets are paved. But it's really our local officials, those individuals like our city councilors, our selectmen, selectwomen, and our mayors and city managers who keep us informed and tell us what it is that the cities and the towns and the communities and the State House that we serve have all of the resources that they need to make sure that all of the citizens are receiving the benefit of good government. And one of those individuals that I have the pleasure of serving with is Mayor Donna Holaday. It was, I think, maybe a few weeks ago, Senator, that we had a bill filing deadline. And I'll tell you, right up until 5 minutes or a minute, Madam Mayor, before the deadline, 5 o'clock on Friday, I was getting those text messages from Donna Holaday saying, you know, we got to make sure that we have our infrastructure bill filed. We have to make sure that Plum Island is taken care of. Oh, Representative, one last thing. And I said, Madam Mayor, we have it under control. She truly has been committed to the service of the people of Newburyport for a long, long time. I've had the great pleasure of knowing Mayor Holaday since I was a city councilor in Amesbury. She's always been available to the people, not only here in her community, but even those people that need a hand outside of the community. She'll make sure that she reaches out to Mayor Gray and Town Manager Neil Harrington and city councilors that she has built some great relationships with over the years in public service, with the governor and the lieutenant governor, making sure that everybody in the community and what she represents and what she calls home since 1978, Madam Mayor, I think, that they get everything that they need and that they deserve. So it is a great, great pleasure of mine and a distinct honor of mine to be serving in my capacity as a state representative and as an elected official, Madam Mayor, with you. Thank you for the great opportunity and thank you for the wonderful relationship that we have. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you, Representative. Now, we have the Greater Newburyport Children's Chorus in back, and they are going to sing a rendition, if I can do this correctly, Sisi ni moi. Not bad for an Irish kid. Gina McGowan is the choral director, and she's going to explain what that means.
First of all, we just want to say thank you to Mayor Holaday for inviting us to be part of this special evening. The children are excited to share this song with you. The words are not a specified language. It's a made-up phrase that the composer chose, and it really, he translates it as, "We are one." So the words of the song tonight are going to echo the Reverend's words that we had during our gathering. You'll hear, "We are one, and we are all one people."
come up. Thank you so much. Good job. Thank you. I'll try not to say too much to spoil that moment. Wasn't that terrific, really? I'll never say heya and feel differently. So, that's a tough act to follow, but the council president has to do this. He is Barry N. Connell. He is the council president. I think he's terrific. Then again, I work for him, so I really need to say that. Without any further ado, he's going to introduce also the mayor.
Boy, hearing those kids makes me wonder if I should quit the council and join the choral society again, you know? Before I get started, there are a couple of folks who have wandered in who didn't get the recognition they deserve. I want to point out Councillor Greg Earls, who I don't think was identified previously. Are there any other councillors here? Oh, Councillor Zeed from Ward 1. Councillor Tantar. Councillor Shand. Councillor Khan. Have I missed any yet? Larry's there. There you are. Councillor Junta as well. Would you please thank them for their service? And the Honorable Ken Gray from our sister city in Amesbury is here tonight, trying to pick up some pointers from Mayor Holaday, I think. But, you know, what I said to him when he sat down was he's welcome to sit here as long as we win the Thanksgiving football game this year. So, not so well. Yeah. But Mayor Ken Gray, our friend and colleague. You know, being a mayor and being a publicly elected official is tough sometimes. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. People criticize you for being too bold, and I've heard people say that sometimes Mayor Holiday's too cautious. Look, she gives me the microphone tonight, and that puts an end to that. That's a risky move, Mayor. You should know that. Anyhow, I'm pleased to at least have a moment to share some thoughts with you and introduce Mayor Holaday. Mayor Holaday and I met in 2001 it was, under odd circumstances. It was the first time each of us was running successfully. Anyway, I'd run previously and lost, but she was up to the task the first time around for city council. And we met in an unlikely location, in Linfield, I believe it was, picking up lawn signs. I had a stack of Connell signs. She picked up the Holaday signs, and I said, "Are you Donna Holaday?" She said, "Are you Barry Connell?" Yeah. So that's how we actually met for the first time. And I have to tell you that having worked with mayors from Dick Sullivan and Ed Mullen all the way from the late 70s up to the present time, there's something that they would probably all say is critical in terms of being a successful mayor and accomplishing the things that we want for our city. And it has to do with forging relationships. Relationships with our delegation in Boston, with our delegation in Washington, Senator Markey, Senator Warren, Congressman Moulton, but also our friends, hopefully they're our friends, in Boston. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I'm not referring to the senator and the representative, but the administration that may be in place at any given time. And the advantage of having a mayor work for a long period of time is that she develops a reputation. Now, I went to the Mass Municipal Association meeting this year, and one of the things I noted was the very close relationships she has with all the other mayors. They know her, they respect her, they admire the work that we're doing here in Newburyport. There's so many of them say, "Gee, I wish, we could do what you've done there." And, of course, a lot of it has to do with relationships. Relationships with the governor, with the lieutenant governor. If we have an environmental problem, calling Secretary Beaton. If we have a problem with the roads, call Secretary Pollock. That counts. And you may not see it, but I do. And so it's with great pride that I'm here tonight to recognize Mayor Donna Holaday, my friend, my colleague, to make the presentation of the State of the City tonight. Donna, come on up.
evening, and thank you so much for being here. Senator DiZoglio. Whoops, I've already. Senator DiZoglio, Representative Kelcorth, Mayor Gray, Council President, members of the City Council, school committee members, Sean Gallagher, our superintendent. Thank you all for being here. I also want to thank you all for being flexible and understanding the circumstances that we had to reschedule this event, and I appreciate all of you being here. Many of you might not know, or most of you do know, that I lost my dad a few weeks ago, and so that was why we had to reschedule. And so I appreciate, at a time when there is such discourse in our country that is challenging, and to think to what's been going on over the last couple of weeks in terms of the outreach of support, love, care, cards, phone calls from so many people from the Newburyport community has really touched my heart and my family. So thank you so much. The state of the city. What is wonderful about the state of the city is that it brings us all together to pause, to take a moment to stop and reflect, and to look back on what we have accomplished together in this past year. So let's take a look at this year in review. January started with an inauguration, and thank you for your continued support and my re-election for another 4 years to serve as your mayor. We had many return to the City Council. Sharif Zeed, our Ward 1 councilor, Ward 2, Jared Eigerman. Ward 3 brought us a new city councilor, Heather Shan. Ward 4, Charlie Taunter returned. Ward 5, Larry Junta. And Ward 6, Tom O'Brien. We are at-large councilors, Bruce Vogel and Greg Earls, Joe Devlin, and Barry Connell, of course, our city council president, and we brought in a new councilor, Afroz Khan. We also were able to bring a new member to our school committee, Brian Callahan, and welcome. It was nice to have you on board. The year started with the demolition of the old fitness factory, so that we purchased the property from New England Development so that we were able to move forward with a decade-long project that our city has debated and discussed for many, many years. And I am so looking forward to the garage opening at probably the end of April. Desmond worked with us with the RTA for many, many years as the engineering firm. GNR Construction has done a fabulous job, and Heary has served as our owner's project manager. But we also realized that we were faced with some real new challenges in terms of trash. The Waste Task Committee presented some of their findings on Monday night. We have a lot of work and discussion to move forward on what we're going to do about these rising costs. The main driving force behind this was the Chinese National Sword Policy, which they used to take a lot of our recyclable materials, and now they have reduced that by 30 to 40%, causing major problems for us locally, at a state level, and on a national level. We also saw a major change happening with Anna Jakes Hospital. They held a very positive community forum here talking about their merger. And after 2 years of rigorous study, on March 1st, I'm happy to say that they will become one of the founding 5 members of the new Beth Israel Lahey Health System. We also were very fortunate to receive a $1.3 million grant, Safe Routes to School, from Mass DOT. They typically fund 2 communities a year. We were very, very grateful to be one of the communities selected. And I need to thank Jody Vining, but also Juliet Walker and Gary Gorski, who were really instrumental in moving this process forward. This is a really important project for High Street and bringing much greater safety and for our children to get to school. We also joined a civil lawsuit with Rodman, and Sandman against those responsible for the distribution of prescription opioids. And that process is moving forward, and we'll keep you updated as we get more information what's happening on a national level with that lawsuit. I'm also very proud of our police department, in particular Danny Sinclair, who not only developed the STOMP program, which is modeled after the Angel program in Gloucester, where those with addictions can come into the police station seeking help, but she also is instrumental in leading 28 out of 34 communities, bringing them together with police-assisted treatment following an overdose. And she's working in partnership with the Essex County Sheriff Detox Center, with our local hospitals, with Pettingill House, and with Perry Recovery Coaches. And they're hoping to bring the rest of our Essex County community into this fold in terms of being able to do a much more comprehensive approach in working with those with addicts. We also have a small nonprofit that started, a husband and wife team, the Keens, the Pelican Intervention Fund. They have been in existence for 3.5 years, and to date, they have served 44 young adults with addictions. Following the City Council's passage of the master plan, work diligently began again with the Zoning Advisory Committee, who has been working for several years to revise our zoning. I also was very pleased to be able to be recognized by my peers to receive a leadership award for serving as the president of the Mass Municipal Association. And then I am grateful to the City Council who worked with us on coming together with another $5 million, I'll call it Phase 3 appropriation for the wastewater treatment facility. A lot of the work was done to rehab this plant, but the one piece that was eliminated from the contract was odor controls. That was a real problem for particularly all the residents who live in the south end around the plant. So we were able to work with environmental partners, covered the clarifiers, brought in a new biofilter. The biofilter is this way, this piece of equipment here. And we worked with Methuen Construction, and that has reached substantial completion. And in the past year, I am happy to say we have had zero, for the first time, zero odor complaints from the wastewater treatment facility. And I would like to recognize Chris Pratt. Is he here? He is our new superintendent of the plant and has done an amazing job continuing those upgrades. Thank you, Chris. And as February came along, we were working on trying to get the governor's housing bill, housing choice bill passed. This is an important bill to expand housing across the state that would also benefit Newburyport. Unfortunately, even though everybody agreed with this bill, they couldn't reach consensus at the end of the legislative term. Today, the governor refiled the bill. So I'm hoping that we can make some movement in this area over this next legislative term. Right, legislators? And we also had a new high school principal join our ranks, Andrew Wolf, who was taking the place of Michael Parent, who was heading to retirement. We also filed with the state a home rule petition that would allow us to hold a municipal election where we would be able to introduce a new bill, 41C.5, which will help all of our seniors with their property taxes. So we have just completed our analysis of that. The packet's going to the City Council at their next meeting. There will be more public information about this and advocacy as we move towards the November election and begin to offer some more property tax relief in addition to the current benefits that veterans, some of our seniors with circuit breaker and disabled vets currently get. We also would be able to add this as a new program. It wouldn't take away from any of the existing benefits that any of our people with disabilities or veterans are currently receiving. We also saw the 9th Annual Youth Asset Awards by Youth Services, which is a wonderful event where the youth recognize adults in our community who really are championing work with youth. And of course, our annual Eagle Fest, which brings thousands of people into our wonderful community, have an opportunity to enjoy these magnificent birds and spend time and money in our community. And then again, the waste stream committee started because we are really experiencing significant increases in our trash hauling. We used to get paid for recycling, now we are paying for recycling. So we have to do something as a community to reduce our waste. In March, I usually start a State of the City with pictures of storms, but last year I thought we were going to make it through until March 4th. And then we got hit with those 3 high tide cycles called they keep making up all these new names for these storms. This was the bomb cyclone nor'easter, which hit the East Coast. Plum Island got hit pretty severely, as you can see from some of these pictures. Increased erosion, flooding that we hadn't seen before. Storm surge was really pretty significant on the bay side because the marsh was so frozen it couldn't accept the storm surge. And so we are continuing to work with the state. Really pleased to see that the governor and we had Speaker DeLeo spoke to the mayors today, all focused on programs to help communities with climate change and resiliency. And then we hired a new superintendent, Sean Gallagher, who's with us tonight. And as our superintendent, Susan Vaccaro, was preparing to retire, and our youth services received a really prestigious award for all the work they're doing in suicide prevention with our youth in the community, which is a really significant issue. And congratulations to Andy Egmont and all of her staff. Kathy Riccio from the schools, who are all working together to address this issue with a program, Signs of Suicide. And then you might recognize the Blues Brother here. Does this gentleman here look familiar to you? That happens to be Mayor Gray. Well, Katie Ives was the one who changed, our former senator, who decided that we weren't going to do Irish roast anymore, but we were going to do the Irish Idol. So she made us all sing. So, but they're waiting this year. There won't be a Link House St. Patty's Day event. They're thinking about doing something different after years and years of that event. So, but Mayor Gray won that year. He was outstanding. You want to do a rendition for us, Lena? And the City Council began deliberations on zoning for cultivation and adult use retail. We also are required by our city charter to submit a capital improvement plan, which we did. As you can see from some of the pictures around side of the cover of the capital plan, we did some improvements to walkways and walls at the high school, the middle school parking lot, which desperately needed to be repaved, and additional lighting was completed this summer. We put more money towards roads and sidewalks. I know, we need more, but we put more money towards roads and sidewalks last year than ever before in the history of the city, and we will continue to focus on that. 2 new trucks, which unfortunately weren't here for plowing this year, but they will be coming in hopefully next month for DPS. We've done drainage study. We've done studies with particularly Phillips Drive, which has been experiencing a lot of drainage issues there. Some new technology for our IT department, and of course a new van for our Council on Aging. I'm also very pleased that the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, under the leadership of Karen Kennard, has started organizing every 6 months meetings for us to come together with the legislatures in Merrimack Valley and to have conversations about the needs of our communities. And those have been very, very productive meetings. In addition, we had received a MVP preparedness grant, municipal vulnerability. This was a spinoff of the great work that was done in the Sandy grant that really put us in a great position to be able to apply for this grant with the state and began to bring people together to identify vulnerabilities in our community and the highest priorities. For example, the location of the wastewater treatment plant right on the Merrimack River is one of our biggest concerns right now, but there certainly are others. We also saw the Essex Community Foundation bring together all the communities on the North Shore for a wonderful day of discussing the creative economy. And as a result of that, the city received a small grant and will be working on some temporary artist shanties down by the waterfront this summer to provide a little more opportunity for artists to present their talents to our community. And Lindsay Height, who I noticed is here today, the executive director of our Neighbors Table, has been working hard to expand services to Newburyport. She also is now bringing food directly to community services located in the basement of St. Paul's, and we really appreciate your outreach and support to our community, Lindsay, and thank you for being here tonight. The Chamber also had their annual meeting, and Ralph Castagna received the prestigious Ed Mullen Award, and our own Mike Bartlett received the President's Award. We saw plans from the Newburyport Redevelopment Authority as they began to figure out how they were going to convey their existing property and work towards their dissolution, which we have been waiting for a long time, and to have one major stakeholder hold most of the property on the waterfront, and that process is going forward. We also had the opportunity to do some dune nourishment out on Reservation Terrace, which during the pictures of the March storm really got hit hard. And so we were able to complete a dune nourishment project and need to do more to continue to protect Plum Island. Our FOG regulations, which stand for fats, oil, and grease, this is a real problem for our infrastructure. Some of you might remember several years ago where all of downtown was shut down because the grease and fats and oils had solidified and had basically stopped any movement of anything through our sewer system right on State Street. So we had to start working on policies and regulations regarding restaurants in particular having appropriate grease traps, having them cleaned out, and be able to protect our infrastructure. All of the restaurants and those with grease traps have come in for training, and they have now information on directly on their cell phones, apps that they can keep track of what's going on with monitoring these FOG regulations. And to date, we've had a really strong compliance from the restaurants in terms of these regulations. In our Senior Community Center and Council on Aging, we lost a great person, a great volunteer in our community this past year, Ralph Ayers. He was our emergency management director many, many years ago, and he was a great volunteer, a great storyteller, artist. I could go on. And so his family came together where we dedicated a plaque and a flagpole in his honor at the Senior Community Center. Meals on Wheels is a wonderful program that has moved a couple years ago when we opened the Senior Community Center and gave them a permanent home. And I am sorry to learn that the key woman there, Cindy, where is she? Right here, who's been working, Roseanne, 30 years? Been running the Meals on Wheels program, is retiring on Friday. So we'll hopefully have a chance to recognize her when we do the part 2 of the State of the City. Pickleball, what can I say? It's become so popular, and you can see the people who participate in that. Seminars, classes, these programs at the Senior Center are just bursting at the seams. And then at our library, Books in Bloom is their annual fundraiser that they hold, which is a wonderful event. If you hadn't had the opportunity to attend a Books in Bloom, I encourage you to do so. The archives have recently received a $30,000 grant to do more work on preservation, which is wonderful, and they continue to run amazing amount of programs, and their numbers still continue to be very, very high in terms of attendance and library use. In some of our school activities, Attorney General Healy came to our middle school. She has introduced a curricula called Project Here, which is a curricula that teaches students about making healthy choices and about addictive behaviors. And here she's with a class taught by Jay Murphy and working with the students regarding this curriculum. Our Energy Advisory Committee also worked with members at the Bresnahan School on their STEM fair. There's also the high school open house. And of course, Molly Ettenborough, our sustainability coordinator, continues to take students out and take them out on what we refer to as sustainability tours. Our Parks Department continues to, this will be our third annual Show Your Sport this year, where that raises money through their conservancy to help support our sports programs. And one of the things that we do is we honor 3 coaches each year. Last year we recognized Kevin Lucy and Neil Reardon and Mike Berry. Followed by the Hillside Sustainable Living had their groundbreaking, which was a wonderful event. This is a very complex project that I certainly have been working and learning from David Hall about for 5, 6, 7 years at this point. But the project is going forward, and it will be a net zero living community. So we have to continue to watch the development of this project. The Human Rights Commission held their second annual iftar to raise awareness regarding Muslim and the Islamic faith, and I'm sure that you're going to be doing this again this year. Ibrahim and Afroz really were instrumental in leading this wonderful event, which truly has raised awareness in our community about the Islamic faith. I started several years ago the Mayor's Breakfast for Scouting, where it also gives me an opportunity to recognize distinguished citizens. Last year, had the opportunity to recognize Ann Ormond for her work on the chamber and everything she did for our community. Vicki Hendrickson, of course, with all that she does for the Literacy Festival, as well as Adult Ed, and Skip and Marge Motes for all the work that they do in the Archival Center and preserving so much of our history. Youth Services also hosted a wonderful event where every year the students in our schools take a survey regarding risky behavior, whether it's the YRBS or the Search Research Institute survey. And what happens is the students get this data first. They analyze the data and then they present the results to the community. It's a wonderful event, and encourage you to attend their youth conversations this year. And then, of course, we move into Memorial Day, which is always a wonderful event. Kevin Hunt does a fabulous job organizing these Memorial Day events with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, police officers, our firefighters, our veterans. And he also wanted me to mention that the Buy a Brick program for the Veterans Memorial Fund out here across the street in Brown Square, the money from that Buy a Brick program has been really instrumental in helping us restore many of our veterans' memorials as well as flagpoles. Then, of course, beginning of June is always our high school graduation, and that's when we saw the change in leadership with our new superintendent, Sean Gallagher, taking the helm, as well as Andrew Wolf, the new high school principal. I'd like to also recognize Jerry Mullen for the amount of work that he has done on the Little River Trail. There was a dedication in June to that phase of the trail that he completed. Dr. Case, who runs the Newburyport Choral Society, they did a program called Annalise, which was all about Anne Frank, and they collected money to put a chestnut tree at the middle school. And the students did a wonderful presentation about Anne Frank, and then we all came outside and released butterflies as we dedicated the tree and also the stone to honor victims of the Holocaust, because we didn't have anything of that nature in our community. The 7th annual Derek Hines race happened. This is a wonderful event that the Hines family has pulled together in honor of their son. They lost in the war. And every year, hundreds and hundreds of veterans and first responders and others come to run this race to raise money to help veterans. And then we have started a tradition with a July 4th festival run by the parks. And that helps raise money for their conservancy fund. And you can see some of the work that they did this year with the rain garden at Cushing Park, the gardens that they replaced at Atwood Gardens, the Joppa Walkway, and so much more. There was a change of command in Boston where Captain Eric Doucette relieved Captain Claudia Geltzer, who is a real friend to Newburyport and has been here many, many times over the course of her term. And he took the helm as commander of Coast Guard Sector 1 Boston. During Yankee Homecoming, there was a Generation of Giving, which is their a new title to recognize volunteers in the community. We had 2 high school seniors from Newburyport who were recognized, Caroline Bell and Hannah Durkee, and 2 Newburyport residents, Carolyn LaRoque and Diane Hawkins Clark, who were recognized for their tremendous volunteerism in our community. At the Learning Enrichment Center at Kelleher Park, a new art space was dedicated, and Nancy Earls, I would also like to mention, is retiring in April after, I can't even describe the work that she has done with our most at-risk youth in our community, that she started a small grant program and has done an amazing job working with these youth and their family, and she will definitely be missed. New England Development, our community gave a lot of pushback in terms of their conceptual designs on the waterfront. And so I'm very grateful that our city council, under the leadership of Jared Eigerman, Ward 2 councilor, set up a stakeholders group meeting and began to say, okay, how can we give New England Development more direction in terms of what our city would be willing to accept for development on the waterfront. They've done a great job. That report is completed, and then more work has to happen with New England Development in terms of reworking their conceptual design. The Impossible Dream Catamaran, thank you, Paul Hogg, and the work of Carol, her name just went out of my head, help me. Thank you. Gambel, who they brought in this, it's a fully accessible catamaran. And so many individuals within our community who have disabilities were able to actually get on the boat and go for sails. We are working with the NRA as they move forward, as I mentioned, in terms of the conveyances of their properties, but also on their park design for the central waterfront. And then we approached September with estimates somewhere between 12 to 15,000 who came by car, train, boat, and for the Riverfest for Bare Naked Ladies. And I have to thank our Department of Public Services on the direction of Tony Fernari, Mark Murray, our Marshal, and Chief LeClaire for all of their work in terms of making this a wonderful event, but incredibly safe event for our community. We received, every year, it varies somewhere between 80,000 to 125,000 from the Gaydon Morrill Foundation. Gaydon Morrill was a mayor here in the city, and he was instrumental in securing funding for building our high school. And so his family has come together, and they would like to install a granite marker on the grounds of the high school. But in addition, they're going to create an outdoor learning space. And once that space is completed, then this marker will be placed to honor Mayor Gaydon Morrill. The Exchange Club every September, on or around 9/11, has their Field of Honor, which is an opportunity for us to recognize our first responders. And then opening day of school, I don't think I ever remember a superintendent riding a school bus. But things went really smoothly and really well with the opening of our school. And I have to say our superintendent is doing a fabulous job during his first 6 months in his leadership. Friends of the Newburyport Trees installed this beautiful sculpture on the rail trail as they look for more and more donations to continue to upgrade trees in our city. And then Molly Attenborough and I were so thrilled to be invited by Governor Brown and by Michael Bloomberg to attend this international conference, the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco. There's a picture of Michael Bloomberg there, Al Gore. Had an opportunity to meet Mayor Breed of San Francisco, who invited mayors from across the world to come together for a reception, and John Kerry spoke also. We made some very serious commitments about waste reduction and reducing our carbon footprint there, and our Energy Advisory Committee continues to work on those issues. And then our Lieutenant Governor came in under Secretary Janelle Chen of the Department of Housing and Community Development and presented a check to the YWCA for $600,000 for their new lodging model that will be part of Hillside Community. We are approached the 3-year anniversary, it's hard to believe, Roseanne, of our Senior Community Center. And there was a special recognition for all of the donors who helped. We had some gap funding when we were completing the construction there and had an opportunity to bring the donors together to say thank you once again. Youth Services has started a new campaign. Of course, Andy always is moving her department forward. This is called 5 to Thrive, and it's based on 5 principles of youth development: value, engage, empower, support, and inspire. You will hear more work about that going forward. And then, of course, what we've all been waiting for is 5 years, $292 million project for the replacement of the Whittier Bridge. One of the things we successfully did, Salisbury, Newburyport, and Amesbury, is we came together under 3 different secretaries of transportation and advocated for mitigation, which was this shared use path. Unfortunately, it opened at the end of November, so I'm sure many people haven't had a chance to actually ride it, bike it, walk it, but I encourage all of you to do so. There's beautiful interpretive panels there, and I encourage everyone to take a chance to go and take a walk and see this magnificent bridge and the shared use path. There is also an annual benefit every year for the Garish Breast Cancer Center at Anna Jakes Hospital, and one of the things they did this year was they had a fashion show, and one of our police officers, Megan Tierney, is a survivor of breast cancer, and so she is escorted down the red carpet by Marshall Murray. And then, of course, Lois Honegger was asked to be a model and is also being escorted by Marshall Murray. And then we approach November, Veterans Day. I would also like to recognize once again Larry Sostek. He is a U.S. Marine Corps vet, and he single-handedly cleaned all of the headstones at the Veterans Cemetery, and they look beautiful. And thank you all for continuing to support our veterans at Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and through our BRIC program. We also saw the re-election of Lieutenant Governor Polito and Charlie Baker as our governor. We welcome our new senator, Diana DeZaglio, and also congratulate Jim Kalkhorst on his re-election as our state senator. December, we saw the completion of another really important project, the Graff Road Lift Station. This was partially funded with $1.8 million from a MassWorks grant. And Jamie Tuccolo did a wonderful job overseeing this construction project. Unfortunately, we had to sort of go back to the drawing board because the bids came in really high. Thank you to the City Council for working with us on this really important project. And then I would also like to just give a shout out to our police department for every year around Christmas they do it. Look at all of those bags of food they collected for the Salvation Army, for people in need. And they also beards are becoming really more and more popular, but they grow their beards during November and to raise funds, and that's for cancer treatment and a donation to the Salvation Army. Well done. Thank you. So you can't have the state of the city without discussing the city's finance. And I am very, very grateful to our finance team under the leadership of Ethan Manning. And we received again from the Government Finance Officers Association our Distinguished Budget Award. And we also had our AAA bond rating reaffirmed. So how do we get our revenues to support all the things we do in the city? The majority of it comes from property taxes, local receipts, and then state aid. So let me break down some of those a little bit for you. Our tax rate is set in November by the City Council with the assistance of our auditor and our assessor. Our tax rate at this point is 13.8 per $1,000, and that allows us to generate over $56 million from property taxes. And you can see from the pie chart how that's broken down into residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. In terms of looking at the 8% of local receipts, this is how that breaks out, with motor vehicle excise being the highest source of revenue in that particular component. We also had a really good year in terms of license and permits. Building permits had reached over $1 million, which is the highest we have ever received in terms of building permits this year. And our state aid, it's flat. What can I say? It hasn't been rebounded since 06, 07 when there were midterm cuts, and we've never seen local aid reach those levels. So we continue to struggle, particularly with Chapter 70 funding. We're encouraged this year by the promise bill that's been filed. The governor has filed a bill. There's a lot more energy around changing this antiquated 1993 funding formula for the schools, and we're hoping this year we can get it done. We are not going to see a really significant increase. We might see some movement from House 1, which is the governor's budget, with the help of the Senate and House to help move maybe a little more money to help us fund our schools. At this point, more than 50% of our Chapter 70 funding comes off the top and goes to the charter school. Parents have the right to make choices about vocational schools, charter schools, Montessori schools, parochial schools, but it's really, they've got to find a better way to fund charter schools so that's not coming off the top of public schools. And what does our budget look like? This is how it broke out for this last fiscal year. As you can see, public schools, 44%. The next largest area is employee benefits and public safety. To break out our school budget, 61 cents of every dollar goes to education. And this was important. Our schools, when I took office in 10, our school budget increase was 0.5%. We were still reeling from over 30 teachers and program cuts. Our schools were in terrible shape in terms of the Bresnahan, the physical structure, Knockmullen, we had no technology. We were still using overhead projectors in our schools in 2010. So the new school building projects, the new elementary school, the renovations to Knockmullen, all came with an influx of technology, new programs, and really helped our school district tremendously. We've spent a lot of effort getting our schools to the position where they need to be. We now, I think the increases to the school annually now is somewhere around 28% since I took office in terms of increasing their operational budget. And that breaks out further in terms of debt service. We do have an assessment we pay every year to the Whittier, and we have a few students who attend North Shore of Oak Tech. So debt service for the schools is there too, pensions and health insurance. These are our reserves, not doing too badly. They should be between 5 to 10% of our budget. They're about 7.9% this year. Would really like to get those up. Those are based on our stabilization fund and free cash. Our long-term debt, you can see this as we broke out, is about $116 million, which isn't bad. I mean, it sounds outrageous, but it's not when you look at the bigger picture. Our general fund excluded debt is 34%. That's for the schools, the library, the police station. These are things that we vote on as a community that we have agreed to increase our tax base for in order to fund. Sewer and water, that comes off your water and sewer bills for the water plant upgrades and the sewer plant upgrades. Absolutely essential. The CPA funding is for the field space, as well as we're almost done with the bond for City Hall. That was one of the first things we did when we became a CPC community, was to fund money to restore the beautiful brownstone, which is on the outside of this building, to preserve this, because it was built in 1852. Really glad that the community came together and agreed to do that. You can see our total debt service. The ones on the bottom are within the levy limit, which is based on what we take in for revenue on our taxes. The excluded debt is what I was talking about in terms of those we particularly vote on, water and sewer, and you can see how our debt service begins to level off and over the next 10 to 15 years. Unfunded liabilities are of real concern. GATSB are the rules that we follow in terms of accounting. They're developed by the federal government, and other public employee benefits. These are long-term, these are really pension and, they're not pension, these are benefits that we pay to employees that have retired. And that this is a problem, I think, for all but 4 of the 351 communities across the Commonwealth. And nobody seems in the legislature to really want to take a hard look at this. They just keep moving the year out. So we're now talking about 2061 in terms of being able to address that liability. The one concern that I think most of us have is now that the S&P, the audits, the people who come and review your finances for your bond rating are now going to be looking at these unfunded liabilities. So what are our financial policies? This is something that's really important to our city, is that our debt service is not to exceed 8 to 10% of our budget. And we have maintained that despite all of the wonderful things that we have done together in this community. Our debt service is at 6.4%. So we still have some bonding capacity there. Our stabilization fund, we have always set the target that it should be a little more than 5% of our budget. We're a little low there. Free cash, we'd like to end the end of a fiscal year with about $500,000 or 1% of our tax levy. We did meet that. Our stabilization fund plus free cash should be about 10%. As I said, that's a little bit low. And I have to give our treasurer, is Julie here? Julie Langering. She is our treasurer, and she has done an amazing job in terms of working with me. When I took office, there was millions of dollars in unpaid property taxes. People just didn't bother to pay their taxes, and nobody was really doing anything about it, and that's not fair to each of us in this room who pay taxes. So we put together a pretty aggressive plan, and look at our property tax rate now, 99%. Thank you, Julie. So what are some of the pressures that are really causing some of our struggles with putting our budget together? Stormwater is a new unfunded mandate by the EPA, MS4. You've heard us talk about that. We have hired a stormwater engineer and have started to put together a budget for that. But this is, it's a concern as we go forward in terms of dealing with all of the requirements of this EPA mandate. Infrastructure needs, as you know, we still have under the ground a lot of water and sewer lines that are very old, and we do have a good capital plan in terms of moving this forward, but it's still a concern. Streets, sidewalks, we're working as hard as we can to get caught up, but it's when you have years and years of deferred maintenance, it takes a while before you can really begin to see the impact of all the work we're doing. As I mentioned, pensions, health insurance is a real concern that continues to go up. I think this year we're going to have a little relief in terms of not seeing astronomical increases, but it's still the more of our budget the health insurance takes up, the less we can do for schools and for city services. And you've heard a lot about solid waste. This is also a concern in terms of those rising costs. So what are the things we can continue doing? We can continue all of our energy efficiency efforts. We are a green community. We receive green community grants. We have a really dynamic energy advisory committee under the leadership of Molly Ettenborough, who is doing a wonderful job in terms of making sure that we have greater efficiencies in our schools. Steve Burkholm does the same in terms of all the efficiencies that are happening in the schools. We worked for many, many years to cobble together enough funds, and with a competitive grant from the state, have completed networking all of our municipal buildings with fiber. We are reducing sick time buyouts in our contracts. We're doing some more work in terms of collaboration and regionalization. And we are doing, we have I think she works 25 hours a week now, our grant writer, and does a really nice job in terms of bringing in significant grant funds every year. And we are seriously looking at operating a fire-based EMS this year. So where do we go from here? We have to finish the waterfront, central waterfront, with the NRA dissolving and designing a park and making the conveyances of their land. With some controversy, I have to say the Custom House now owns its own, is the owner of that particular property, with a very strong deed that if anything happens that they do not meet the mandate of running this maritime museum, it turns over to the city. We will be sharing the filled tidelands with the Waterfront Trust, and most of the property will be going to the Waterfront Trust. As I mentioned, we need to continue to work with NED on the adoption of the ad hoc group recommendations, the completion of the Clipper City Rail Trail, and the cleanup of the PCBs behind the wastewater treatment facility. We need to continue to increase our focus on roads and sidewalks, open up the garage, and really evaluate our operations and management of the facility to ensure that we are bringing in sufficient revenue to pay our debt. We need to look at the impact the facility has on the neighborhood, and we also have to complete phase 2 of the traffic study and reduce some of the parking on the waterfront. We need to complete the feasibility of relocating the youth services. I've been working for over a year with the National Guard to, some of you might recognize this building here. This is the currently emergency ops on Low Street right across from Knock Middle School. It's owned by the National Guard, and we had been working for about a year to try and figure out a way that we might be able to purchase this property for youth services. And the obstacle that delayed this process was all of the property that the National Guard sales goes into the general fund of the state. They wanted this bill, military justice bill, passed so that they have 5 priority properties, that this money then goes back to the National Guard. And that is important to them in terms of their budget. And Governor signed that bill on January 3rd, and I'm grateful to our state rep and senator for helping us move that forward in informal session, which is not an easy task. Safe Routes to School project, that should go out to bid. Probably early summer, and we have a complete streets technical assistance grant working with TEC, and we've had a couple meetings identifying priority areas in the city, and we will be submitting a grant for one of those priority areas that we still have to finalize with the community and City Council, of course. Also, as many of you know, we changed our charter almost 10 years ago, with a charter review committee that we all voted on and voted on the new charter. One of the pieces in the charter says that every year that has a 9 in it, we need to have a committee come together and look at the charter and make modifications or additional changes to it. That's something that I'll be working with our council president on in terms of appointing a review committee to look at the charter and any revisions we will be making. I'm looking forward to the completion of the zoning rewrite. Andy Port assures me it will be done by the end of this fiscal year. Thank you, Andy Port, for your leadership here. And again, working with our waste stream committee and the public to identify solutions to these increasing costs of waste. We have 6 proposals that came in to do a feasibility study. This is the Story Ave, or the Cutter Fire Station. And it is so out of compliance with what a fire station should be in terms of separation of the trucks from living space. I could go on and on about the problems of this fire station. And so we've hired, we will be selecting in the next couple weeks a firm who will be conducting the feasibility study on conceptual design for the new fire station. And we had a wonderful analysis of running fire-based EMS, ambulance service, and we have submitted that study to the City Council, and we'll begin having further conversations about the city moving forward as a revenue source for the fire department in terms of fire-based EMS. Had a trip to DC a few weeks ago with the Plum Island Foundation, and the one of the selectmen from Jeff Walker from Newbury to again advocate with Army Corps of Engineer headquarters in Washington, as well as meetings with Senator Markey, Senator Warren, and Congressman Moulton, asking them to dredge the river again. It's important for our economics, tourism, safety, the Coast Guard. We could go on, and ask them if they could also set up a meeting with our local Army Corps of Engineer district office. And also we're looking to permit onshore placement of the sand from the dredge, because that didn't happen last time. Any sand we can put on Plum Island is helpful. We're finalizing the community host agreement and having a little bit of struggle over the impact fees. We can charge up to 3%, which could bring in the city a significant chunk of revenue, potentially $1 million a year for 5 years from Happy Valley, who is renovating a building in the business park. We're trying to work with them to have it go beyond some additional funding to the city beyond that 5-year impact fees. We'll let you know when we can finalize that. And then again, as I mentioned, about continued our advocacy for school funding. And then as Senator DeZoglio mentioned, working on combined sewer overflows. Actually spoke to the Attorney General today about her being involved in a summit that we're organizing in May, hopefully at UMass, with all the operators of plants upriver, and all the legislatures and people coming together to begin to look at environmental, economic, health, legislative, and community advocacy work to help us begin to address this really serious problem of combined sewer overflows, which is only going to get worse with increased precipitation. And in closing, I always like to take a moment and recognize our staff, but also wanted to introduce to you some of the new hires that we've had this year. Bob Armstrong, is he here? He is hired as our assistant building inspector. He's been with us now a couple months, since the end of December, beginning of January, working with Peter Benet, our building commissioner. Giselle Stevens has taken over as our head librarian when Cynthia Dodd retired in August, and it was a nice, smooth, wonderful transition. Lori Pierce, is our procurement agent, who we snatched up from Amesbury. Thank you, Mayor Gray. And Victoria Finnegan, is she here? Victoria is our new assistant treasurer collector, and also Matt Coogan is my chief of staff, who joined in end of October, and around that same time we brought in Lori Bunyan, our new who's back there, our new HR director. Under finance, I did introduce Ethan Manning and Julie Langeran, who's part of that team. Is Jill here? Okay. Public safety, Mark Murray is here, and Paul Hogg, harbor master. And Chief, I think, is in Vegas, I heard. He gets a vacation every once in a while, it's all right. Under Public Services, of course, Tony Fenari, who oversees Water, Sewer, and Highway, and Ted Angelakis sitting next to him, oversees our water plant. I mentioned Chris Pratt, who oversees our sewer plant. And John Eric White is here, who is our city engineer. Andy Port, who is our planning director. Our representing the fire department is Lieutenant Bradbury. Thank you for being here. And Roseanne Robillard, our Council on Aging director. And I know that, as I mentioned, Sean Gallagher from our schools. And Assistant Superintendent Angela Bick is here. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that you have other staff with you here, and I appreciate all of you coming tonight. So in closing, we cannot accomplish all there is to do without working together. Thank you. All right, part one done. Thank you all for coming. I really